Good morning, day 2. Today is Tuscarora Trail. There's still 3 people here. There was 5 people last night, and then about 8:45 someone else came in. But there's still 3 packing up. So I just finished packing up and got a lot of extra water for today, and just getting ready to. I'm getting my shoes on right now, and I'm gonna be getting on the trail very soon, hopefully before 8. Okay, here we go. The start of the Tuscarora Trail. Obviously, I'm going to be following light blue blazes. This is all brand new to me. Let's see. So, Wagner's Gap says 12.1. So that's okay, because that's about what we're doing. Do 47 if we want to go to Shenandoah. That's the 12.1 is about what Highlighter and I are going to be doing day 2 of the Laurel Highlands. So let's get into practice now. So the guys that were at the shelter last night, they were all section hikers. The 2 guys that I met first on trail that I unfortunately didn't catch their names, and they ate in the tent site. They didn't come down to the shelter and socialize. I did see them this morning though. And then there's 2 other guys that got to the shelter just before me. They passed me when I was actually at the where the Tuscarora Trail starts. But they were just out for 4 days. They're ending in Duncannon today. And another guy that came, the other 2 guys, they were Andrew and Jeff. And then the other guy that came that was in the shelter with me, Nick, he was from the deep south. But he's been section hiking the Appalachian Trail. He's section hiked from Springer all the way up to, and today he'll be ending in Duncannon. So he just happened to have the same itinerary as the other 2 guys. And the other guy that came in late last night, well, not late, it was 8:45, but we were already in bed. He's actually lives in the same county I do. He's a local, he's just out for a few days. So, but anyway, it was a good night. It was a cool night, but I was warm. And so now let's just explore the Tuscarora Trail and see what we can find. I think there's going to be quite a few views today. So looks like I've got a little bit of view up there, so I'm just gonna walk up just to there and see. It's a little hazy and foggy, but it's not that far of a walk, so I'm gonna walk up and see if there is a view. Really pretty view. There's a bench here, but I'm not going to say I want to at least get past, I think it's Route 34. I can hear the cars. I want to get past Route 34 before I stop and take a break. Okay, so I'm coming out to 34. I see a sign over there, so obviously this is the way we're going. Let's see. Now it says private property, so now I need to figure out, do I go along the fence? Or, let's see. Well, look at the app. So Wagoner's Gap is where I'm going, only 8.6 left to go. And I am going to find a place in here somewhere where I can stop and have a break and a little bit of a snack. So I just finished having a snack. It was weird because I walked up somebody's driveway, but got a snack, got a really good drink, and now we are continuing on. Another view. But it's a nice view, but came from there and the trail goes up there. This is, or does it? Wait a minute. No, I think it does. So, oh goodness, let me see. Yeah, it doesn't go in there. Yeah, it definitely goes up there. So, enjoy the view. Maybe it'll be a nicer view once I get to the top. So I'm almost to the top. Oh, and this is brutal and steep. So far it's taken me almost a half hour. So once I get to the top, I'll film some more. Oh my goodness. Okay. Just that little bit more. So it took me 45 minutes to climb up here. I got up here and I dropped my pack and had lunch. I took about a half-hour break once I got up here, but like I got up, I was like, I'm having lunch and I'm resting before I film or take pictures, but it is so beautiful. Got views on both sides. And I am really hoping that that is the steepest hill I have to do today, because that was brutal. I have never, that was a really long, hard, steep climb. I will never complain about the climbs on the Appalachian Trail again. So, but I'm gonna get my pack back on. It's about 10 minutes to 1. And I'm thinking I have maybe 6-ish miles left. I think I'm about halfway, maybe not quite halfway, but close to halfway. But hopefully that's the hardest part and I can knock these last miles out quickly. Starting to get a little rocky. This is beautiful. Oh my goodness. This is gorgeous. It's a little hazy, but so beautiful. There's a little bench here that I'm sitting on. So I just got up another big mountain. I've had ups and downs all day, and I've had, of course, that one big climb. This one was a decent climb. So I got up and got a snack at the top of the mountain and got a good drink. And now I've got maybe 3 miles left. So hopefully I don't have any more surprise big climbs. So I'm at Long Gap. There's a view, but I'm not going to the view. I have maybe an hour left of daylight. I haven't been filming much because this has been an extremely difficult section. And and unfortunately I have no service either, but I'm probably gonna have to, at some point, pull out my headlamp. I probably have maybe a mile, if that. Hopefully it's less, but I have a feeling this is going to be a very difficult mile. Had to break out the headlamp. So, but I know I'm really close. So this isn't my typical ending to my videos. So I got home last night. And excuse the chaos behind me. This is my office / craft room for my side business. But I got off the trail last night. I actually had to be rescued off the trail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you what I put out there on Facebook as to what really happened. The app, I thought it was like 11.4 miles. It actually turned out to be 12.1, which isn't a big deal. I've done 12 and 13 mile days before. But let me just read to you the events of last night. And from how I put it on Facebook. It says, so despite how beautiful these pictures are, I do not recommend this section of the Tuscarora Trail between Route 34 and Wagner's Gap. The first half of the trail is beautiful, but that one section after Route 34 is about 9.5 miles with absolutely no road access. And when I researched the trail, I knew that at the very end there would be a lot of rocks and it was very technical. But what I did not know is that there was a good 5 to 6 miles of technical rock scrambles. This section of the trail was not just hard, but treacherous. Normally I can do a trail mile, depending on the terrain and the elevation, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. With that being said, I should have been off the trail between 4 and 5 o'clock that evening. And I kept thinking that I just had a little bit more to go until the end. But in reality, this trail is so technical and so treacherous that it was taking me a good hour and a half per mile to get through this. The trail was also dry, and even though I carried 5 liters of water with me, I was running low on water. Probably about 5 o'clock, I had about a half a liter left that I had to use sparingly. About 5 o'clock, I also realized that I had no cell service, so I had no way of communicating with my husband. I just continued to take my time and make my way through these rocks, conserving water as I went. About 7 o'clock, I still had no cell service, and I knew that it was going to start getting dark in about an hour. I also knew that probably at this point, my husband was in panic mode. At 7:30, I took my headlamp out of my pack and put it on so that I was ready for when it got dark. I finally had to switch my headlamp on about 8 o'clock and still had no cell service. The dark slowed me down even more. I would get to a blaze and then scan ahead for the next blaze and then make my way to that one. And because this was a rocky trail and not a woodland trail, it wasn't easy to follow. There were a couple times I wasn't sure which way the trail went. So I would just hike a little ways away, keeping the last blaze where I could see it, and then scan for the next one. Several times I had to backtrack back to the original blaze and go the other way and scan. I think the only cool thing about this night hiking was I saw a possum that kind of gave me a look like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. And then he ran off into the woods. Finally at 8:30, I noticed I had cell reception, so I immediately called my husband. When he answered, the first thing I said to him is, I am okay. This is just taking me a lot longer than I thought, but I have my headlamp on. He put me on speakerphone and said, honey, I need you to repeat that. When I asked him why, he said, because I'm here with the state troopers. Obviously, when he knew it was going to be dark soon, and he had absolutely no contact with me. He had no idea if I had fallen and broken my leg, if I had fallen and hit my head, or if when I got dark, did I get lost? He had no idea what my condition was. I thought that once I had said I was okay, the officer would leave, but thank God they didn't. He told me that they were going to stay there until I was out and had a spotlight shining on the trailhead, so as I got closer, I could see the light. Unfortunately, I never saw that light. The whole time I'm thinking, I have less than a mile to go. I didn't. Shortly after that, I'm starting to hear thunder in the distance, and about 9 o'clock, my headlamp, which should have lasted me 4 hours because it didn't have a full charge, but it had a charge enough it should have lasted me. It started to dim on me. I knew I was losing the power in my headlamp during this whole ordeal. I called my husband and told him that my headlamp was losing power and there was a storm coming in. He said, sit tight, we're on our way to get you. I found a large flat rock to sit on. I took my pack off and pulled my umbrella out. Even though my clothes got soaked, I kept the umbrella over my head to keep my glasses dry because if they got wet, I would have had a hard time seeing with no way of getting them dry. I sat on that rock in a thunderstorm torrential downpour, and complete darkness so I could conserve the battery on my headlamp for 2.5 hours. Thank God it wasn't windy. It was so cold, and I just sat there looking for the flashlights coming down the trail. At one point, I finally remembered that I had an emergency blanket in my pack. I don't know why I didn't remember before, because it has always been in my pack. So I turned my headlamp on to go into my pack to look for that. In the distance, my husband saw that light. When my husband and the officers were coming to get me, they had to traverse very technical rocks, also in the dark with flashlights. One person would stay by the last blaze, while the other 3 would scout out to find the next one. And then whoever found it would yell, "I found the blaze." And then they would all go to that blaze. And they did this kind of chain that they made from blaze to blaze until they had made it to me 2.5 hours later. One of the officers told me he saw a bear. When my husband pinged my spot where they found me, when he got home, he checked the distance and he said it was 2 miles in. And at that pace that they were moving, it still took them 2.5 hours to get to me. There was no way I could walk that fast out because I had been hiking for 12 hours and I was physically exhausted. Back to when my husband saw the light, when I had turned on the headlamp, at the exact moment that they were just up the trail. He saw the light and I heard him yell my name, so I just kept yelling back, "I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." And then my husband, 2 state troopers, and a conservation officer showed up. Glenn had water for me because I was super low on water and I was still conserving it. At one point while I was waiting, I was catching the rain water that was dripping off my umbrella in my hand and drinking it. My husband and the officers were soaked. One of the officers actually lost his body cam in the woods. He said there's a GPS tracker on it so he can go back during daylight hours to get it. A conservation officer knew that there was a lot of private property along the trail, and a lot of the people that owned the property had ATV trails all through there. There were 2 guys that he knew to call to find out where their trail was. So as my husband and the officers were sitting with me, the conservation officer was getting in contact with these men to bring a gator up. Miraculously, when they brought the gator up, it was only about 100 yards from where I was sitting. So my husband grabbed my pack for me, and the conservation officer and one of the troopers went on ahead, and another officer stayed with me as I made my way to the gator. The officer told me that I was not the first person that has had to be rescued off this trail, and I wouldn't be the last. I laughed and jokingly told him, "I promise you, the next person you rescue off this trail will not be me." The 2 gentlemen that drove the gator up were amazing men. They had a cooler full of Gatorade and waters to give to everyone, and they took my husband and I back down the trail first. He knew how cold we were, so he turned the heat on inside the cab so we could warm up, and it was a really long drive down the mountain and very bumpy. By the time he drove out of the woods and into the parking lot where another state trooper and another conservation officer were, still with those bright lights shining onto the trailhead, it was about 12:30 a.m. The state trooper then drove my husband and I over to where our vehicle was parked, while the gentleman that was driving the gator went back for the officers. The funny thing was, when the state trooper took us to our vehicle, I'm searching in the back for the handle to open the door, not thinking I'm in the back of a police car. I told him this was my first time riding in the back of a police vehicle, and he said, "That's a good thing." So what I have taken away from this ordeal is always be prepared for the unexpected. This was a trail I was unfamiliar with and had no idea how treacherous it was. If there was a water source in an area where I could have pitched a tent and I actually had cell service to let Glenn know, I could have just spent the night out there and made my way out the next morning. At no time during this hike was I ever afraid. I was more concerned when my husband and I weren't able to contact one another because I knew that he was really scared, and he was also communicating with the kids at home and they were really scared. As soon as he heard from me, he immediately called home and just said, "Mom's okay." Despite everything that happened, I had everything I needed to survive the night if I had to. I may have had to sit up all night on a rock with the emergency blanket wrapped around me, but the only thing I was lacking was enough water. I can deal with no food, but the lack of water was the only thing that was concerning me. So, would I hike this section again? No. If there was a road access along this trail, I would do short sections of it, yes. But 9.5 miles with no way to get off the trail, I wouldn't do it again. The first section of the trail, absolutely. I also know that this could happen to even the most experienced hikers, and I do consider myself an experienced hiker. However, I am far from an expert. During this whole rocky section, I knew that God was with me. I prayed during this time, and my husband was on the other end praying. I said, "Lord, I don't know how, but please help me make it off this trail and guide every step that I take." God answers prayers. There were many times I should have fallen or twisted my ankle, but I didn't. Looking back, God's hand was on me that whole time. Although I was physically exhausted from hiking 12 hours, I was physically unhurt. I never fell or twisted an ankle. I even believe that my headlamp started dying at the perfect spot because that rock I was waiting on was only about 100 yards from the ATV trail I was taken out on. God got me off that trail. Also, the fact that I was sitting there for 2.5 hours and I turned on my headlamp at the exact moment my husband and the officers were coming upon me was no coincidence, but God's timing. I'm so grateful for the state troopers, the conservation officers, and those two amazing gentlemen with the gator, and so very, very grateful for my husband who kept a cool head and knew exactly what to do. Even when the officers told him he could wait at the trailhead while they hiked in to get me, he said, "Thank you, but I'm going with you." I'm grateful for everyone that was there last night. God bless them all.